music here is in homophonic style.
Did you know that Sony made phono cartridges? Yeah, me neither. But at one point they did. This is probably from the 1970s or maybe very early 1980s. I can't find much information about it except that it exists and you still can get replacement needles for it. It's the Sony VX23P ceramic phono cartridge made by Sony Corporation in Tokyo, Japan. And I got this from an eBay seller in Israel, so I don't know if this was even sold in the US. I mean, it has English and French in it, so maybe it was sold in Canada? I don't know. And you may think this was just a replacement part for Sony turntables, which would have come with this cartridge originally. But if we open it up, this definitely looks like retail packaging. Because I don't think they would have put it in this kind of fancy plexiglass case if it was just a replacement part. I mean, look at that. They even screwed in the screws into the case to hold it in place. And again, it says made in Japan on the bottom there. And there's the little booklet that came with it. It has installation instructions. And there's the replacement stylus ND127P. You can still get aftermarket equivalents of that. And it is a diamond stylus. It says it will last for 600 or more hours of use. And there are the specifications. And it says 780 there. I don't know. Could that be a date code for 1978 or maybe 1980? And I know these days ceramic phono cartridges have a reputation for poor sound quality and heavy tracking and possibly damaging your records because of these things. These infamous Chuodenshi knockoff Chinese-made phono cartridges, which you can get for like $2 each. So when people think of ceramic phono cartridges these days, this is what they think of. These cheap Crosley type cartridges. But with Sony's manufacturing and engineering expertise, maybe they were able to do a much better job of making a ceramic phono cartridge than these things. So that's why I'm curious to try this out.
Three blind mice, three blind mice,
Three blind mice, three blind mice. See how they run, see how they run. They all ran after the farmer's wife, who cut off their tails with a carving knife.
Specifications. It is a ceramic type cartridge, as already explained. Frequency response is not as good as most magnetic cartridges, which pretty much all claim a 20 to 20,000 hertz frequency range, although they never give a tolerance, so it's almost a meaningless figure if you don't know how much it varies from a flat response. But this one claims 30 to 16,000 hertz. Channel separation is better than 15 dB, which is on the low side compared to magnetic cartridges. Channel balance is within 2 dB, typical for an entry-level cartridge. Now here's the strange part. Output voltage, 3 millivolts. Most ceramic cartridges have an output level of somewhere between 200 and 500 millivolts. Well, this one is only 3 millivolts, which is typical for a magnetic cartridge. So it's possible they designed this to be compatible with a magnetic phono input. I'll have to see which type of input it works better with. And like here, Lord Impedance. Yeah, that this must have been designed by Sir Lord Impedance. But it's 500 kiloohms to 2 megohms, which is typical for a ceramic cartridge. They require much higher impedance than magnetic cartridges. Compliance, I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's 2.5 times 10 to the minus 6 centimeters per dyne, whatever that means. And it has a 0.7 mil diamond conical stylus. Very typical. Stylus force 3 to 4.5 grams, a little bit heavier than typical magnetic cartridges, but not by much. For example, the aforementioned AT3600L tracks at 3.5 grams, which is within this range. Otherwise, installation instructions are typical. It just says to connect the wires according to the colors and showing you how to install the stylus and the dimensions. And then the same thing in French and Spanish. And I just realized it doesn't come with a stylus protector, which is unfortunate. So I'll take off that stylus so I don't damage it when I'm installing it. There's a close-up look at the stylus, and you can still get replacements for this today. Unfortunately, there is only a standard conical stylus available for this cartridge. You cannot get an elliptical stylus for it, although you can get a 3mm stylus for playing 78s. And when I removed the cartridge from this holder, I noticed it says AUE. That was a company that made ceramic cartridges for companies like Panasonic. So I'm pretty sure they made this cartridge for Sony. So Sony didn't actually make this. It was made by AUE. And you can definitely see it's a ceramic cartridge because it has this rubber yoke which the stylus fits into. And as the groove vibrates the stylus, it moves this yoke back and forth and up and down. And that bends a ceramic rod inside here which generates electricity, and that's how these cartridges work, as opposed to magnetic cartridges where it's moving an armature and a coil of wire to generate the audio signal. And I noticed they have what appears to be weights in here to make it heavier. So this is the one kind of cheap looking part of it, but when you have this mounted in a head shell, you're not going to see the top of it, so that's no big deal. So I'm going to mount this in this Technics style head shell, and we'll try it out. There it is, mounted and aligned using one of these handy Technics overhang gauges. All you have to do is insert the head shell into it and then line up the cartridge until the stylus tip lines up vertically with the tip of this base here and aligns side to side with the center of that base. There's a little arrow there which you probably are not able to see. And the original mounting hardware that Sony provided was of no use because they provided bolts but no nuts. So there was nothing for these to mount into. So I needed to dig into my 3 bags of phono cartridge mounting hardware, and I was able to find these bolts and nuts and washers to get it mounted. And then I plugged in the wires, which thankfully was straightforward. You just match up the colors according to Sony's manual here, and with the help of some needle nose pliers I was able to get those installed. So this is ready to go on the turntable. And the turntable I'll be using it on is my ATLP 120, which I did a preampectomy on years ago. I removed the built-in preamp, so these wires coming out of it are coming directly from the phono cartridge. The left and right outputs and the ground wire which I added. And I'll be using it with this mixer which has both magnetic and ceramic phono inputs, so I can use whichever one sounds better. First I'll try the ceramic input, and if that doesn't provide sufficient output, I'll try the magnetic input. I have the tracking force set to 3.75 grams, which is right in the middle of Sony's recommended range of 3 to 4.5 grams. I guess I won't be using my ATLP 120 after all, because this is definitely not what 33 1/3 RPM looks like. Doesn't matter what speed I set it to, the motor just revs up to maximum speed. I mean, that's even way faster than 78, and there's no braking when I tell it to stop the motor. It was working fine the last time I used it, although admittedly that was probably a year or two ago. And it doesn't matter if I move this around or turn on or off quartz lock. The only thing that does work is telling it to reverse the motor. You can see it slows down and stops, and then it goes in the opposite direction. But clearly the speed regulation of this turntable has completely failed. So here's the understudy, my 1977 Technics by Panasonic SL1900 direct drive turntable. And there's no way this cartridge has an output of only 3 millivolts, because the ceramic phono input of this mixer is rated for around 200 millivolts. And if I turn it up, it has no problem going into the red. So it's definitely putting out at least 200 millivolts. So yes, you do need to use this cartridge with a ceramic phono input. It will not work with a magnetic phono input. Ceramic phono cartridges used to be so popular that up until the early 1990s, if you saw a phono input on a stereo system or entry-level amplifier, it was usually for a ceramic cartridge, not magnetic. But these days, they have virtually disappeared from modern equipment. The only audio component I know of that you can buy new today that has a ceramic phono input is the Andover Spin Bass, an all-in-one amplifier and speaker system designed to go under your turntable. It has a switch on the back to select either line-in or ceramic cartridge. Now finally, let's hear some samples of what this Sony VX23P ceramic phono cartridge sounds like.
When the words come out of my mouth, can you tell that the words were never really true in the first place? Words come out of my mouth, can you tell that the words were never really spoken by me? Never really spoken or subject of the listener. One concealing meaning in the space between the words come out of your mouth. Can I tell that they say one thing and really mean the opposite? The words come out of your mouth. Can I tell that you are not testing my ability to say? If words amounted to a hill of beans, I would bow down before the bean lords. If they amounted to a hill of beans, I would.
I like being pleasantly surprised, and I definitely have been surprised by this little Sony phono cartridge. It's by no means the best sounding phono cartridge I've ever heard, but it's definitely the best sounding ceramic phono cartridge I've ever heard. And it's sad to think that nothing like this is ever going to be made again. This is a case where perception becomes reality. People perceive ceramic phono cartridges to be of inferior quality, so there's no demand for higher quality ones to be made. That's the same situation that cassette tapes are in. The general public perceives them to be an inferior format, even though they're capable of very high fidelity, so nobody's going to spend the development cost to produce new, higher quality cassette decks and cassette tapes. The demand for them is just not there to justify it. But for those of us who are odd enough to enjoy these underdog formats and obsolete technologies, I'm glad I've been able to give a listen to this Sony VX23P ceramic phono cartridge made by AUE. In fact, I think I'm going to keep it on this Technics turntable and continue listening to it. At least it'll distract me from the fact that my ATLP 120 turntable just died on me. It is 12 years old, but both this Technics turntable and this Sony phono cartridge are over 40 years old, and they're still going strong, so that's no excuse. And this MacBook Pro that I'm using to edit and upload this video is now 14 years old.